Article 30, tolerance in credit amount, quantity and unit price. From Article 30 to 32, you will get at least 3 to 4 questions in your exam, that too in part B. Because all of these articles will be little confusing but interesting, and mostly they are very difficult to understand because of the complicated sentences. And another thing to be kept in mind is some facts discussed in these articles are apply in default even if the credit is silent. So while checking the documents or arriving at an answer in a question, we have to keep these facts in mind in default. That is the difficult thing. First one is Article 30A. The words about or approximately, when used in connection with the amount of the credit or the quantity or the unit price stated in the credit, are to be construed as allowing a tolerance not to exceed 10% more or 10% less than the amount, the quantity or the unit price to which they refer. This article is talking about giving a tolerance to 3 variables. What are they? They are the credit amount or the quantity or the unit price of goods, and this tolerance will apply to that particular variable only if the words about or approximately is used before such variables. If the word about is used before the amount of credit, then plus or minus 10% tolerance is given to the credit amount alone. This will not apply to the other variables, that is the quantity and the unit price. In default, it should specifically mention each and every variable to effect a tolerance to these variables, right? Similarly, if the word about or approximately is used before quantity, then plus or minus 10% tolerance will be given to the quantity alone. Similar case applied to the unit price as well. To understand this, let us take an example. This is an extract from a LC. The amount of LC is rupees 1 lakh and the goods description is 1000 floor mats and each unit price of rupees 100. Now, what if a word about or approximately is used before this total amount? Then the amount that can be drawn under this credit will be in the range of 90,000 to 1,10,000. That is plus or minus 10% tolerance is given to the credit amount. Now, one important part of this article is, as the word about is used before the credit amount only, this tolerance will apply to that credit amount alone. It will not automatically apply to these goods, right? If the issuer want to give tolerance to the quantity also, then he has to insert the word about or approximately before this goods quantity as well. Automatically it will not apply, right? Let us see a question to understand this. A letter of credit is issued for an amount of about USD 50,000. Now, which of the following drawings is discrepant? Here the word about is mentioned before the credit amount. So credit amount is subject to a tolerance of plus or minus 10%. So the credit amount can be in the range of USD 45,000 to 55,000. That is, the beneficiary can draw between USD 45,000 to USD 55,000. In this case, the option C is discrepant. Why? Because the drawing is more than USD 55,000. Here the drawing is USD 55,500. But all the other drawings, that is this USD 54,000 is below 55,000, 46,000 is below 55,000. But it should not be below 45,000 as well. Here in this case, if it is mentioned as USD 43,000, then also it's a discrepancy. It should be within this range only, that is from 45,000 to 55,000. So this is the logic. So here the answer is C. Next one is Article 30B. A tolerance not to exceed 5% more or 5% less than the quantity of goods is allowed, provided the credit does not state the quantity in terms of a stipulated number of packing units or individual items, and the total amount of the drawings does not exceed the amount of the credit. First of all, we have to understand this tolerance applies in default even if the credit is silent, and there is no need to mention anything in the credit to affect this tolerance. That is why I said in the starting itself, there are some facts which apply in default even if the credit is silent. And here the applicable tolerance is 5%, that is plus or minus 5%. It can be either 5% less or 5% more. Of what? This is applicable only to the quantity. And that too when the credit states the quantity in terms of metric tons or kgs. That is simply this applies to bulk cargo items, because it is not possible to ship such bulk cargos accurately as stated in the credit. So this kind of tolerance is given in default to these items, right? Now the next part is very important. the total amount of the drawing does not exceed the amount of credit. As we saw earlier, this tolerance is applicable to the quantity only. So even if the quantity is 5% more than the quantity stated in the credit, the drawings must not exceed as shown in the credit. So if the credit states the quantity not in terms of packing units or individual items, and the drawings are not exceeded the amount mentioned in the credit, then this tolerance will apply, right? Let us see an example. This is an extract from the LC, and the amount of credit mentioned is euro 80,000 and goods description is 10,000 metric tons of wheat. Now which of the following invoice is not acceptable? Here the goods is mentioned in metric tons, that is not in individual items or packing units. So article 30B will apply in default. So the range of the quantity will be 9,500 to 10,500 metric ton. Why? 5% tolerance will be applicable to this quantity in default. So now the first option, quantity 9,760 metric tons and amount euro 78,080. The quantity is within the range, that is 9,500 to 10,500, and the amount is below the amount of credit, that is the drawing is below the amount as mentioned in the credit. So first option is okay. Second option is 10,030 metric tons and amount euro 80,240. Now this is not acceptable. Why? The drawing is more than euro 80,000. So the condition is the drawing must not exceed the credit amount mentioned. So in this case, the drawing exceeded the credit amount. So this will not be acceptable. Then the third option is quantity 9,550 metric tons and amount euro 76,400. This is also acceptable. Why? It is within the limit of 9,500 metric ton to 10,500 metric ton and the amount is not overdrawn. So this is acceptable. The last option is quantity 9,480 metric tons and amount euro 75,840. This is not acceptable. Why? Even though the drawing is not exceeded, here the quantity is way below the range. Here the range is 9,500 metric ton to 10,500, but it is 9,480 only shipped. So this is not acceptable. So here the answer is option B and D. Option is 2, right? So this is how this works, and always keep in mind this will apply in default even if the credit is silent. Next is article 30C. Even when partial shipments are not allowed, a tolerance not to exceed 5% less than the amount of the credit is allowed, provided that the quantity of the goods, if stated in the credit, is shipped in full and a unit price, if stated in the credit, is not reduced, or that subarticle 30B is not applicable. This tolerance does not apply when the credit stipulates a specific tolerance or uses the expressions referred to in subarticle 30A. This tolerance as well apply in default even if the credit remains silent, and the applicable tolerance is 5% less, not 5% more, right? To what? To the credit amount alone. So in comparison, as per article 30A, the tolerance is applicable to 3 variables, that is the credit amount, the quantity, or the unit price, if the words about or approximately is specifically mentioned before each of that variable. As per article 30B, the tolerance of 5% less or more is available only to the quantity, and in this case, that is in article 30C, this minus 5% tolerance is available only to the credit amount, and there are some conditions as well. Let us see that. So the conditions are, the first one is the quantity of the goods, if mentioned in the credit, must be shipped in full, or simply article 30B is not applied. If article 30B is applied, then there is a possibility that the quantity will be shipped less than 5% as mentioned in the credit, right? If that applied, then this article 30C will not apply, because there the goods are not shipped in full. Similarly, the unit price of goods, if mentioned, must not be reduced. This is again if article 30A, as per article 30A, tolerance can be given to the unit price. If that happened as well, this article will not apply, right? So if these conditions are met, then underdrawing is allowed in default, that is 5% less than the amount of credit mentioned is allowed, even if the credit is silent. And another important thing is, this provision is applicable irrespective of whether partial shipment is allowed or not. That is why here it is mentioned even when partial shipments are not allowed, which means this is applicable even when partial shipments are allowed. Mind this is applicable even when partial shipments are also happening, right? This is really confusing when we are dealing with partial shipments. So keep this in mind, this will apply in default. And this part, this tolerance does not apply when the credit stipulates a specific tolerance or uses the expression referred to in subarticle 30A. This means if the credit states specific tolerance to the credit amount, let's say 7%, then we have to follow that. Now this article 30C will not apply, right? So this is all about article 30 tolerance. Understand this article very carefully, even the upcoming articles, that is article 31 and 32 as well, so that it will be easy to answer the questions in the exam, right?